Hey, everybody. Dallas Perkins here. You are listening to the Nothing Shocking podcast. Check it out.
Want to know what's going on in the world of music? Then tune in to the Nothing Shocking podcast, a non-genre based, all ages friendly rock and roll program. Join us weekly for interviews with all your favorite rock stars from the mainstream to the underground. You can find us at nothingshocking.libsyn.com or anywhere you download podcasts.
We're putting the band back together.
The numbers all go to 11.
I'm talking about bands that rock. Led Zeppelin. What about Sabbath? AC/DC. Motorhead.
Does that mean it's louder? Is it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
We're not worthy! We're not worthy!
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
I get up off the ground and raise my head. Days like this, think I should be dead. One for Satan, two for me. Let's cheat the devil, it's fun, don't you agree?
Welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'm your co-host, Jeff Untied, and with me in Dog Bowl Studios is
Coach Nez.
You can find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Libsyn or any podcatchers. Like our Facebook page or follow us on Twitter at No Shock Pod.
You can also find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Rock Rage Radio every Sunday morning at 7 a.m. Central Time. Our sponsor is Ragged Records, located in downtown Rock Island, Illinois, and downtown Davenport, Iowa. We'd like to thank the Hong Kong Sleepover for allowing us to use their music for our intro and bumper ending. Tonight's guest is
Dallas Perkins.
Yeah, a great guitar virtuoso.
Yeah.
Going to go on tour here to 2024.
And he had an album out in 2022 called Experimental Truth.
Yeah, so catch him live if you're on the East Coast or West Coast. Let's get to that interview.
All right, good night.
Good night. Dallas, welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'd like to introduce you, my co-host, Jeff Untied.
Dallas, thanks for joining us tonight.
Hey, thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it, man.
We're so excited to have you. Thanks for the correspondence. We're excited to have you tonight. So let's get right into this. In the summer of 2022, you released your most recent solo LP, Experimental Truth.
Sure.
It was released toward the end of the COVID pandemic. Can you talk a little bit more about the creation of this album?
Oh, yeah, sure, absolutely. So the project started a number of years ago. It was basically I had some ideas for instrumental music, and I wasn't quite sure what, at the time, what the result would be. Some of the tracks were released as singles, in, I think, 2017. And I'm just not sure the other release date, but when COVID hit, I had some time on my hands. I thought, I really, would like this to turn into a full length album.
Mm-hmm.
And I had other ideas that, during the writing process of some of the singles, that I wanted to complete. And yeah, so, during COVID, I had some time on my hands, so I wrote there's an acoustic piece on the track that I spent some time on during COVID in Via Domo, which means the way home in Latin.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of a nice departure from some of the other crazy guitar stuff. And, so I took the opportunity to finish everything up, and, yeah.
Fantastic.
I had it, ready for release by the end of 22, basically.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. Well, when we interview some artists, I'm always fascinated when they talk about, I had that song 20 years ago, just laying in a can. I saw Backstreet, I think you put out as a single in 2017. Which one's the oldest track on the album?
Yeah, actually, I think Mexican Puppets is the first track that I had written. And went through a couple of different arrangement changes, that was the first one, and there's kind of a funny story behind that because when you're writing instrumental music, well, for me anyway, I like to find out a theme to write about, and so in that case, I thought of these puppets that my grandmother had picked up in Mexico on a vacation. She came home, and I was about, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years old, and they terrified me. So,
I can visualize it.
So that's kind of a lot of people wonder why that title. It's kind of odd. I was making some kind of statement, but no, it's just a funny little thing I was writing about. And of course, trying to think of eerie, haunting music, always kind of gravitate towards harmonic minor, and so you got kind of that kind of sound happening in it. But yeah, so that's kind of the idea, and that was a fun track to produce. I have some friends doing sound effects in the middle of it, and some things going on, so it's kind of cool.
Oh, very cool. We've spoke to many artists about their creative approach during the COVID pandemic. Did you feel as though that maybe your writing, you had maybe a renaissance in your writing of music during the pandemic, or was it pretty much just kind of business as usual as we were all locked down?
Yeah, well, when you have more time on your hands, you have more time to analyze, and I think there's probably I like the opportunity of really having a little bit more time to think about some of these arrangements. There's a track on there called Jaguar that I did some changes on the arrangements, and I added a middle section to that, and I really like how that ultimately came out. There's a lot going on in that track, but it's in terms of the arrangement and direction, pretty happy the way that turned out. But yeah, so when you have a lot more time, I guess sometimes that can be a hindrance too. You don't want too much time to overthink things as well, but it worked out, pretty well for me. So
very good.
Yeah. Now you mentioned an acoustic song. Do you for the other more technical songs? Do you use like the same guitar, or do you use a couple different ones, or how's it work for you?
Yeah, that track's kind of interesting because it sounds kind of like a classical piece, but it's not a nylon string guitar. It was actually an older Taylor CE 810, I believe. I believe that's the model number. They don't make it anymore, so it's an older steel string guitar, and I wanted to have a different kind of sound. I didn't want it to sound kind of like a traditional classical piece because it really isn't. I'm not a traditional classical player by any means, but that's kind of more just for me, just my own kind of creative expression on the acoustic, and I'm not trying to, it wasn't trying to fall into any kind of particular style. So just whatever kind of came to mind with that.
Very good.
That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So after you were finished with Experimental Truth, when it was completely over, were you satisfied with the end product of it, or did you find yourself constantly wanting to go back and tinker with things? How do you work when you're in the studio recording your own music?
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting question because, I think a lot of artists have a problem with continually tinkering with things and changing things. I'm really happy with the way the album came out. I really, I think I did spend probably maybe even too much time with some of these arrangements and in the production as well. But yeah, I mean, I reached a point where I was actually very happy, and I knew I was done at that point. So, yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, I mean, do you play all the instruments, or do you bring any get any help, or how's it work?
Yeah, so on that album, the drummer is this amazing drummer, Fernando Jaramillo. He's a Chilean guy, actually, originally, but he's been in Los Angeles for many years. We've been friends. We've been involved in different projects over the years, and so he did an amazing job, in that respect. And as far as I played all the instruments, which is basically just guitar and bass, and I orchestrated some strings and some other effects and so forth. I wouldn't mind having a bass player, I am okay. I think I did a pretty decent job for the bass chores, but I think it was just a matter of necessity of getting things done. Where I really wanted to. I had a kind of an exact idea what I wanted for the bass line, so I just decided to do it myself. And I think the next project, I'm actually involved in a few different projects now, but yeah, I will be staying away from the basement and have some other guys that are really, really, really great at what they do, step in and lend their talents there. So
yeah, absolutely. So when it comes back to songwriting, we've talked to many artists and their theories of songwriting. Some artists will say, hey, I write everything conceptually with a story behind it. For you, when it comes to songwriting, what is your approach?
Well, for instrumental music, again, I mean, it's helpful to have a theme. I have sometimes I'll have a pretty strong theme in mind. Sometimes it'll just be a title, but I am, very visual when it comes to writing. And I do think of things beyond just the music. I think of, how could this look like, if there's more of a storyline behind it, like what would a video look like, in comparison. And so there's that aspect is always in mind during the writing process. Of course, writing music, songs with lyrics, that's a different story than it's kind of almost a different animal altogether. When you sometimes you'll start with a great phrase, you start working on lyrics, then you wrap the music around that. So, but for instrumental music, yeah, it's I like to think of a concept or a theme or storyline, and use that as a way of developing the song. So
very good.
I think I read you work with PRS Guitars. Could you talk a little bit about that partnership?
Yeah, well, we have a pretty long relationship. Really, I think it started around early 2000s, I believe. And at the time, Win Krozak was the A&R guy. He does a lot of production stuff now out here in California. He runs the A&R, the Burbank A&R room for PRS, and he's an old friend of mine. And we did some workshops a little while ago, probably about 10 years ago now, for Sam Ash and Guitar Center, and they're just great. I mean, I always loved their guitars. In fact, some of my early heroes like Jimmy Page, I saw way back in Irvine Meadows, the Page Plant Tour, and you always see Jimmy Page with a Les Paul, and I was at this show, and I was thinking a lot about PRS because at the time I was kind of like, looking at a few different guitar companies, and I got it pretty close. I was like, that doesn't look like a double cutaway Les Paul, which I thought, I assumed that must be what he was playing, but no, he was actually playing a custom 24, like a dark red custom 24. And I thought, wow. So it's kind of there's some nostalgia there, but that was one thing that kind of tipped the scales. And and honestly, I really think PRS kind of took the guitar making craft to the next level of where Gibson kind of left off, a long time ago. I'm I'm way into the aesthetics and, and of course the playability and everything else. Just a huge fan of the guitars and have been for a long time. They're great. They're super great people.
Fantastic. Can you talk a little bit more about strings? I mean, we talked to many different guitarists over the years, their theories on different gauge of strings. It's just amazing to me that everybody has their own theories on strings, what their comfortability is. For you, what size of string do you use?
I typically, there's nothing really too crazy. I use just your basic 10 gauge strings. Sometimes I'll throw on like a 9.5 and a 12, a 9.5 for the high string and a 12 for the B string to give it a little bit of extra slinkiness, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But that's basically it. You know, sometimes I'll throw on some nines on a guitar, just for the hell of it, and just to see, you know, if I want to have a different feel or a more looser feel. But more often than not, you know, I just use basic, you know, 10 gauge strings, pretty light acoustic strings. Been using Elixir acoustic strings, and I've been a long time Ernie Ball user, but I've been checking out SIT strings. I actually like quite a bit as well. Yeah, I know. There are a lot of guitar players have these custom gauges, but for me, you know, it's pretty basic, I would say.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, I saw recently you were playing live in 2023. I think in October you were in Pittsburgh. How do you approach live music, or can you talk a little bit about your approach?
How do I approach live music? You know, for me, you just want to give the best performance possible, and I run the set quite a bit, and you know, it's all about projection, and really, you know, when you know something so inside and out, then it becomes a lot of fun, and those gigs were a lot of fun as well, especially the gig in Pittsburgh, because one of my star students from back in the day, this guy Xander Demos, oh my God, he became just such a phenomenal guitar player. So we that gig in particular, we did a lot of extended jamming at the end of the night. You know, did some covers, and it was so much fun.
Nice.
Yeah, it was a great time. Yeah. And we're planning more for next year. We're planning some guitar shows out here on the West Coast and back in on the East Coast as well. So there'll be some updates. We have some of those in the works. So as to who's going to be on the bill, we're still waiting for that, you know, to be firmed up a bit. But yeah, I am looking forward to that. That'll be fun.
Yeah, nice. When you're songwriting, do you approach with the concept of playing your songs live, or do you work all those chops out later?
Oh yeah, well, it's always about, you know, the performance, whether it's going to be live or video, you know. So yeah, that's always in mind, I would say, for sure.
Nice.
Yeah.
You had spoke about you know, PRS taking the guitar to another level where Gibson left off, but can you talk a little bit more about newer guitar technology? What do you know about it as far as the maybe more antiquated styles of the 80s to what they're doing now, as far as what is PRS offering their partnership with musicians like yourself as far as new technology and guitars?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, Gibson does as well, not to undermine Gibson at all. You know, and I think Gibson probably needs to stay with their core classic, you know, those legendary instruments. I think I don't follow a lot of what they do, but it looked like a few years back they had a version of what looked like their version of a PRS guitar, and I don't remember being all that hip on it, to tell you the truth. But I know some of the guys at Gibson, and they're doing some innovative work too in terms of, you know, playability and the electronics. I mean, with PRS, it's a big aesthetic thing with me. I really like the original design, and they're doing, you know, they're doing some interesting things with the Silver Sky, the kind of their version of the Strat looks like, and I played some of those. I played a lot of the guitars at the A&R room in Burbank, and you know, they even beyond the guitars, I mean, their amps are amazing too. I think I played through one called an Archeon, I think is the name, and recently, and it really sounds incredible. But yeah, no, both companies I think are pretty innovative. I just like with PRS, you know, it's more like in kind of different ways of setting up pickups, the electronics, but there's a lot of new technology in guitar making that went around years ago. You know, like compound radius and the different pattern necks, like the thin wide pattern necks with PRS or a lot of these companies for that matter. You know. But yeah, that's what I would say about the two.
Yeah, very good. All right. Well, you know, since we're talking about, you know, gear, pedals, effect pedals wise, how involved are you using effect pedals. I know some of the guitarists around here where we live, some of these guys are just straight in. They just plug right into the amp and they're pedal-less. But as far as pedals for you, how many do you use, or are you a believer in them? Or?
To an extent, yeah. I mean, they're like I use a Keeley compressor on some of the material, live here and there. But I kind of honestly I use effects pretty sparingly. I like to create the effects with my hands. But I have a Phase 90. I had just some effects that are I don't want to say typical, but what a lot of players use. But again, I mean, I'm not a big effects guy, and I think you could probably hear that in my material. But that's kind of where I stand on that. I do like it when it's used tastefully. But sometimes there's other players that it's really all about their effects, and that's cool. I respect that. But yeah, for me, it's all about getting the sound from your hands and from your soul.
Very good.
So there you go.
Yeah. Back in 2000, you had a full-length album, Emergent Behavior. Can you talk a little bit about that album?
Yeah, that was an interesting record because it was the first album I sang lead on, and it did all the songwriting. And it's kind of funny. It's a good album. There's some great songs on there, but it's kind of reflective of what I was listening to, which aren't typically like a rock or metal thing. I think I was like listening to Dave Matthews and a lot of some other artists, and I could hear some of that stuff coming through on some of the tunes. But it was cool for the time. It did okay, and I was kind of touring around California and supporting that album way back then, and yeah.
Oh, cool.
Have you heard any of that record?
Oh, yeah, I listened to it today. I liked Eden Girl and Outer Body. I can't read my own writing.
Outer Body Alice, yeah.
Yes,
sorry.
Cool. I couldn't even read my own.
Yeah, Eden Girl's a good... Eden Girl. I always liked Eden Girl, and that's one I always think about kind of redoing and maybe modernizing a bit, But yeah, that's probably... those would certainly be two of the highlights of that album. Sure.
Lead to the next question. Can you talk a little bit more about the challenges of writing, music for an instrumental album opposed to a traditional vocally based album? How does it work for you? Is there much of a transition as far as, okay, I got to get into instrumental music here, or I get into a traditional, I'm taking over vocals, or whoever's singing or whatever? What is the mindset between the two for you?
Yeah, so for me, the challenge is always creating music that's, I want to say, of course, memorable, but that has a strong theme to it, right? So even if there were no guitar solos, you'd have a real cohesive piece of music. And so I look for themes, and of course, you want to play to the point where you're showing your ability, I would say, but it should be in the context of something melodic or some theme, other than I'm just playing for the sake of playing and shredding or whatever, Mm-hmm. So that's, and I always look for something interesting, to do in a composition, I guess in the process of writing, anything just to be a little different if I can, and hopefully whenever I play, I'm always on the pursuit of being an individual stylized player where somebody could hear that, and I always say, that's really, I like to think, I've got this style that people can recognize, but it's really not a fact until somebody else is able to say, oh yeah, that sounds like so and so or whatever. That sounds like Dallas Perkins. Then it's like a reality, I guess. Yeah. But that's kind of where in terms of playing and writing instrumental music, that's what I look for. I'd like it to have something throughout the music that sounds like me and is melodic or has something that's memorable, has maybe some kind of a hook to it, you know.
Yeah, very good.
I thought Joe Satriani was great at just creating great hooky music, you know. Just, you know, it's anybody could relate. Anybody could listen to. You don't have to be a guitar player, you know.
Oh, well said.
Well, take us back to those early days in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. What made you pick up a guitar?
Wow. So I've always wanted to play guitar. I mean, as far as I can remember, when I was just a little kid, you know, I always asked for a guitar for Christmas, but I would always get like a fake guitar, like a plastic Mickey Mouse on it, and it would have plastic strings. And I would get this, and I'd open it and be like, no, I want a guitar, you know. And yeah, I mean, eventually I think when I was like 8 or 9 years old, I got an acoustic guitar, and I thought it was just daunting to be able to actually learn how to play it. And I played around with it for a few years. But later, I think when I was around 13, it all came together when I kind of discovered who Jimmy Page was and what it meant to be in a band and playing lead guitar. That whole thing kind of was like an epiphany. And so I immediately, I wanted to dive right into it. And, you know, I wanted to learn like immediately. I started taking lessons at a music store, famous music store in Pittsburgh called Pianos and Stuff. Now it's called N Stuff. And my guitar teacher when I was a kid, this guy Dave Manella, who you know, has been an old friend of mine, and he was one of my original inspirations, for playing. And in fact, Dave had his own guitar company, Manella Guitars, in Pittsburgh for many years, and he does repairs and that sort of thing now. But yeah, I just dove right in. I mean, I loved, of course, Led Zeppelin, and then sure enough, right as I was starting to play, Van Halen emerged, and I was just blown away. And from there, I mean, I was like, that's what I want to do. And man, you know, there are a lot of guitar players that are over the years that have been super inspiring to me, but there's nothing like those early days, you know. I mean, it's like Jimmy Page, through Dave Manelli turned me on to, you know, Richie Blackmore and a lot of these players, and Steve Howe and Al DiMeola, guys like that. And yeah, so just was completely absorbed in it. And yeah, it was just a magical time, you know, that time.
Very cool.
And the you know, early 80s was just an amazing time for guitar, you know.
Yeah. Well, not only are you a performing guitarist, so you're also a highly regarded session artist. Can you give our listeners an insight to your roots as a hired gun in the industry? How did it all come about for you?
Well, just through word of mouth, really. I mean, a lot of stuff I played on, I've never even heard like the final, you know, product, or, you know. I've done a lot of one-off type sessions, you know. You know, it's just all about really just trying to get to the bottom of what they're really looking for, you know, whatever the project is about, you know. And once you've got that dialed in, then it's really not a lot to it.
Well, you know, the term hired gun, you know, it's used very loosely. You know, for you as the session guy that you are, do you like to be referred to a hired gun, or is it an easy term for you to accept? Or a lot of people I don't like to be known as a hired gun. I want to be known as an artist. Talk a little bit about that, a little more about that.
Yeah, no, that doesn't really bother me. I mean, that is the fact of the job. You know, I mean, you're hired, so a gun being a hired gun, it doesn't sound too bad. Not too, you know, it's fine.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, you know, you've been invested in your work as a clinician and instructor for aspiring guitarists. You know, outside of your upcoming 2024 tour you got going on here, how busy will you be appearing at different clinics this coming 2024 season? Yeah,
the workshops are going to be a big part of it. Yeah, for sure. You know, in fact, even this last one, I was trying to arrange a few clinics but it was there wasn't enough time to get it in the schedule. But I love doing clinics because I love the interaction with the audience, and it's certainly more challenging. You've got to really react and you never really know what questions pop up and where it's going to go. So that part of it's kind of exciting, but I am looking forward to doing the workshops and the guitar show project I mentioned with Xander Demos. Mm-hmm. We're also going to be doing like some joint workshops as well, so that'll be a lot of fun.
Oh, so cool. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Back in 2014, you founded a webzine. I think it was GuitarHD.com.
Oh, yeah, Guitar HD, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that? About that whole, I think you interviewed Steve Vai.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. So the idea for the webzine was came together from myself and a dear friend of mine, Barbara Searman, who back in the day was head of advertising for one of the guitar magazines. In fact, I think they were like the third largest. It was like Guitar Player, mm-hmm. Guitar World, and Guitar for the Practicing Musician. Do you guys remember that magazine?
Yes.
Yeah.
Company was Cherry Lane. So those guys did a lot. Back in the day, were very helpful, and we've done some projects together, and we all remain friends. And Barbara and I were talking about ideas for webzine, and we came up with that name. And she was pretty connected with from working with the magazine, and so. But with the thing with Steve Vai was interesting how that came about, because when we started the webzine, there's a pretty well-known bass player, back in the day named Randy Coven. You guys familiar with him?
I don't.
No.
That's okay. So he was on, Cherry Lane, Guitar Practicing Musician. They had their own label back then, and I think Blues Saraceno was one of their artists, and Randy Coven was an artist. He's kind of like I would say, like a Billy Sheehan, Stu Ham kind of guy, just an amazing bass player. And he was Steve Vai's bass player in college in Berkeley. Mm. And he passed away that year. Oh. And so I was able to reach out to Steve Vai just to see if he wanted to say a few words. So we were going to do a piece on Randy Cohen. So it started off with this phone interview with Steve. And he was just so gracious, and he helped a lot with what we tried to do with the webzine, with the website at the time. And we did a promo for his Vai Academy. I think it was the second or third one. But he was just incredibly nice and welcoming. He was super supportive of the project, and we also did a few interviews with Lee Ritenour. And we tried to cover the gamut in terms of styles and genres too, so it was a lot of fun, but it was a lot of work. And there are a lot of, I know there was I think the old editorial staff of Guitar Player tried to launch a site around that time called Pure Guitar. And they kind of suffered the same fate. They put out a few issues, but it's hard to sustain at the time. So there's a lot of competition, to say the least, obviously. Yeah. But it was fun. It was a lot of fun, and it was great to get to know Steve a little bit, and some of the other guys that Joel Hoekstra was another guy. It was we did some interviews with, and he's great. A friend of mine, Gary Hoey, great guitarist, old friend of mine from back when Gary and I, taught at Musicians Institute around the same time, and so he's been an old friend. Yeah. Good stuff, man.
Yeah, very good. Well, you have a tour planned for 2024, like I just mentioned before. Can you give our listeners an insight to, I guess, maybe the schematics? Where are you going to be touring at? What part of the country? And where can we find you?
Yeah, so, obviously on the West Coast. In fact, we're doing a show at a club called Stages in Santa Ana. I think I have the date right. It's the first night of the NAMM show, so I think it's a Friday night. That'll be that'll be fun. But yeah, West Coast, East Coast, of course, as well. A lot of the New England states. Definitely want to make it down to Florida, some of the southern states as well. But yeah, Nashville, Texas, probably Houston, and Austin. Some of the areas. But yeah, going to be working on all that right at the top of the new year. So hopefully it'll be. I'd like to make it as extensive as I can, but yeah, the shows will be great. There'll be workshops. And yeah, just DallasPerkins.com. I'll be posting updates there, and of course, I'm easy to find in social media, so that'll be we'll be all posted there as well. So
yeah, tell me a little bit about your the current band you're working with.
Yeah, so the band consists of bassist Jason Cornwell, good friend of mine, amazing bass player. He was Eric Martin's bass player actually for a number of years, and involved in a lot of projects. But he's been super helpful with promotion, and the logistics of a lot of these shows. And great guy, great player. And on drums I have Scott Wadkowski, who's in fact Jason and Scott are also involved in a few other projects. So super cool, super tight rhythm section. And I'm just really excited about these shows. These guys behind me, man, it's going to kick ass for sure.
Can you talk a little bit more about the recruitment of these artists? How'd you get them on board with you?
Yeah, so the idea was, I'd met Jason through a mutual friend, David Moreno from Puddle of Mud. They're involved in another project called Westbound. So I was looking to put something together. A band that was on the East Coast for these shows, and so Dave referred me to Jason, and he's just been instrumental, in really facilitating the whole project, really. And so those two are both based out of the Boston area. When we get started, at the top of 24, we're gonna of course do a lot of rehearsals out here, but the same access to rehearsal and everything when we do the East Coast leg of the shows as well. So,
very good.
So, yeah, there you go.
One thing I did want to ask you is that in our area, we're in the Quad Cities, Illinois, Iowa, on the Mississippi River, and it's like a hotbed in Davenport, Iowa for blues, rock, and rock and roll. Man, we'd love to see you come to Davenport, Iowa, if possible. We have plenty of facilities for you to perform in. So if you're shopping around for places to play, look at Davenport, Iowa. We have the Redstone Room. We have the Capitol Theater.
Iowa. Well, I will definitely do that. My father grew up in Lamoni, Iowa.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Not too far from us.
So
yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, please explore your options here because we'd love to come see you play, man.
Well, we'll definitely have to do that. Absolutely.
Fantastic.
So when things get firmed up, we'll put that on the list, man.
Oh, very good. Well, some of our listeners might relate to you as the former guitarist of Roxx Gang. Can you talk a little bit more about your brief time in the band?
Yeah. I love that band, and I would have stayed with them longer, but I was always into kind of guitar-driven type thing, back then, and there's an opportunity with Relativity Records when they were still a guitar label back at the time, and I really wanted to go to New York and work on this project with them. However, it was right at the verge of them turning into more of like a hip hop type label, and they were, and Vi and Satriani were their two main guys, and of course that all was changing. So had I known that, I certainly would have stayed in the band because it was a great band, great songs, I thought. And they're still very good friends of mine as well. In fact, I still talk to Kevin Steele quite a bit. And hoping maybe we can do something, You never know.
That would be exciting.
We did, one of the promoters from this recent stint, was a fan of Roxx Gang, and we it was kind of funny because we were asked to do an acoustic set, even though I'm like doing this instrumental thing. We put something together and we did Red Rose, and it's like the crowd loved it, and it's amazing, I mean, and I think over the course of time, they've developed a lot of fans that they probably don't know even exist. So we'll see what happens. Maybe I can get them to, maybe we can do something. I certainly would love it.
Oh, that'd be so cool.
Yeah, I mean, I wish my tenure in Roxx Gang would have been longer, because great band, great songs, great guys.
No, absolutely. All right, so I got one last question for you for the evening, and then we'll leave you alone.
Sure.
I asked this question to every guest. It's going to be the toughest question the entire night, so you better get ready. So here we go. So the the mystery of rock and roll. This is no longer a thing with the dawning of internet, social medias, what have you. But for you, the musician and the fan, what do you prefer? Do you miss that 70s, 80s mystery of rock and roll? Or do you like this new age of accessibility where if we didn't have the internet, we wouldn't be doing this with you tonight? So, for you, you're on both sides of the spectrum, obviously, musician, and all you musicians are fans. What do you prefer?
Man, I got to say, honestly, I would prefer the 70s, because that was something that was just, it was just so, when you discover something, and a lot of times it's through word of mouth.
Yeah.
That, when you see it for real, it's just so unbelievable, and maybe I'm kind of, what's the term, like, waxing or whatever, maybe it's all nostalgia, but, you always think of these past, in the past, everything was like so wonderful, but I really think it was, and, I mean, if you think about it, back in those days, the first time you see somebody live, it's just such a rush, I mean, you look at a magazine and you think, oh, there's Jimmy Page, or there's Jimi Hendrix, and then you see things. But I remember, like, the first time I saw, for instance, Aerosmith.
Yeah.
Seeing, like, Steven Tyler on stage, it was just like, it was mind blowing, because I'd seen, loved the band and would always get whatever magazine would come out, with any of these rock stars, and I remember there's another thing where Valerie Bertinelli was being interviewed with Eddie Van Halen. Okay, this probably was like 1980. And they were talking about, I think it was like the National Enquirer or something was bothering them, And Eddie Van Halen started talking, and it was just like, wow, Eddie Van Halen is talking. This is incredible. You know what I mean? You just would never see that, It's like, wow, he's like a real person, I can't believe it. So yeah, I mean, all that excitement, forget it. It's like everything is so, it's all about instant gratification. Now, there's things I wish would be nice to have, where if you're starting out and you're learning to play, there's just so much on YouTube, and you can slow stuff down. I mean, like in my day, I'd like trying to slow down the record and to try to figure out what a lick is. It's detuned, and you still can't really even hear it,
Yeah.
But, one thing I've learned in those early days is, like, man, you've got to really develop your ear. You really have to work on it. So I think I ultimately prefer, like, the old days, the way things were, because it was just the mystery was just the greatest,
Yeah, fair enough.
Just hearing about it from somebody just talking about it, and you're like, wow, yeah, we got to go see this. We got to go. Yeah. So there you go.
Oh, fair enough. We're out of our allotted time for the evening. Is there anything that we left off tonight that you would like to plug or promote?
Yeah, no, I think we covered them quite a bit. So, yeah, it's been super great talking to you guys. I had a great time. And yeah, love it, man. And let's do it again sometime.
Absolutely. So this is how things are going to work out. Once Jeff, the editing wizard over here, when he gets it all cleaned up for us, we'll send you the link, and please share it to wherever you can, all your socials, if possible.
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to put something up tomorrow. Just to give everybody the heads up.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
you were fantastic. Thank you for doing this with us tonight.
You guys are great, man. This has been great.
We appreciate
appreciate it. Absolutely.
All right, man.
All right, thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Everybody grinds the stone and makes their own mistakes. Hide in the headlights, fight the grip of fear. You can make your dreams come true, but you just can't do it here. Hey. Everybody eyes the gun and screams inside their head. Everybody bites their tongue and pays their bills instead. Hide in the spotlights, fight the grip of death. You can have the air you need, but you best not take one breath. Hey. Roll the dice. Take your chances. Everybody knows the game is fixed, there is no prize. Everybody pulls the plug and says their last goodbyes. Move to the sunshine, fight the grip of nights. If they ever take from you, then you plug out both their eyes. Hey. Roll the dice. Take your chances.
Welcome to the night. You think you know Night Demon? Then the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast is for you. Step into the darkness as we peel back the curtain to give you an unprecedented, all-access look into the mind and the heart of the demon. We're talking band history, song analysis, studio anecdotes, stories from the road. It's everything a diehard Night Demon fan could want and more. This is the only place to learn the inside scoop, The deep dive trivia, the untold tales from the band members themselves and those closest to the Night Demon story. Need more? The sacred Night Demon Crypt will be pried open to reveal demo recordings that have never before seen the light of day, all with in-depth commentary by the band and the people who were there for the writing and recording process. This is a gold mine, a treasure trove of all things Night Demon. Head over to nightdemon.net or wherever you listen to podcasts.